Hi, I'm Liardi Fermil from BSC 18 and I'm gonna discuss cultural deviance theory and delinquent subculture theory. Culture deviance theory. Charlene used to live on a farm with her working husband. When her husband died, she had to move to the city to afford to live. The neighborhood she moved to was once filled with working class white families, and by the time Charlene moved in, most of the families and residents were African American. And the housing costs in the area declined dramatically due to neighborhood demographic shifts. Unfortunately, the neighborhood and surrounding area had always had a high crime rate and still did. The question is, does crime happen due to the people who live in the neighborhood or due to the neighborhood itself? Before we proceed to the topic, let's define deviance. Deviance is any violation of society norms. It is also the behavior that departs from societal or group norms. Defiance can range from something minor, such as traffic violation, to something major, such as murder. Cultural defiance theory. It mentions that individuals are not responsible for their defiance as much as the community which in they reside. It states that crime strongly corresponds to the cultural values and norms prevalent in a society. In other words, individual may turn to crime not on account of any innate character traits, but because they are influenced by the people, place, and the socioeconomic status. Cultural deviance theory suggests that conformity to the cultural norms of lower class society causes crimes. Cultural deviance theory states that social disorganization and delinquency are linked, resulting in crime as normal response to social, structural, cultural characteristics of a community. This theory uses cultural mapping to explain that people are not inherently deviant, but they are influenced by circumstances. Individuals may do crime due to the place they live in, the people they are surrounded by, and the socioeconomic conditions of their microenvironment. Those three elements unite to create a unique subculture influencing the individual and their chances to do crime. Two subcultures were made in cultural divine theory. Those are lower class subculture and middle class subculture. In lower class subculture, it emphasizes toughness, excitement, fearlessness, immediate gratification, and street smarts that makes people perpetuate and facilitate crime and deviance. In middle class subculture, it emphasizes hard work, delayed gratification, and education. In this subculture, at every step of life, they are judged by members of the middle class who have different cultural standards. The cultural deviance theory was created at the University of Chicago. The two sociologists, Clifford Shaw and Henry Mackay, conducted a study on crime patterns in Chicago in the early 1930s to determine the reason for the high rate of delinquency in inner city areas and help rebuild the community. Shaw and Mackay concluded that socioeconomic status correlated to race and ethnicity resulted in higher crime rate. In the mix of cultures and values created by a smaller society with different ideas of defiance, and those values and ideas were transferred from generation to generation. Delinquent subculture theory. Story time. Eric came from a lower class family. He wants to achieve a high social status where he is respected and heard. He compared himself to some middle class boys in his areas. Due to his social background and financial status, he could not achieve the respect middle class boys receive. Eric started to respect and accept himself. To regain respect from others, he joined a delinquent gang from a lower class that was defined by their demarcation from the attainable middle class. By joining gangs, lower class youths are rejecting the culture that has already rejected them. They may be failures in conventional society, but they are kings and queens in their own neighborhood. Definition of terms: delinquency: criminal behavior or acts that do not conform to the moral or legal standards of society, carried out by a minor. Subculture: it's a group of people within a culture that differentiates itself from the parent culture, which it belongs, often maintaining some of its founding principles. Subcultures develop their own norms and values regarding cultural, political, and sexual matters. It is based on idea such as music, age, location, religion, or even lifestyle. Delinquent subculture theory. It refers that the subculture that exists in a society embodies several value systems than the rest of society. The behavior shown within the subculture is essentially different from the other subcultures because of these new norms. There are two major traditions of delinquency subculture theory. First one is reactive subculture by Cohen, 1955. The second one is independent subculture by Miller, 1958. Cohen made two observations. The first one is the delinquency tends to happen in gangs that are concentrated in urban slums. Number two is the delinquent gangs have their own distinct subculture, which is organized around deviant values. These are characterized on top of their divine values and morals that enable their members to gain prestige and recognition. Values such as having a specialist vocabulary, on internal beliefs, as well as different ways of dressing and acting, facets which define subculture. Its key element is to acknowledge those who are seen as an outcast or delinquent. This theory also explains the relationship between delinquency and the lower class. Not only are these youths put at a disadvantage compared to their peers being in a lower class, they are also at higher risk to be in families where they not have their ambitions and educational goals in family role models. As a consequence, their collective solution is a conscious reaction to the restricted opportunities made available by society. The delinquent conduct is right by the standards of his subculture precisely because it is wrong by the norms and values of the larger culture. The delinquent subculture theory was created in the 1950s by Albert Cohen. Albert Cohen was a student of Edwin Sutherland and Robert Merton. They influenced his work on delinquent subcultures. The main study subject in this theory was boys. One of his main ideas was that violence and aggression, or delinquency in general, are ways for boys to earn respect and earn the title of masculine. Girls are also subject to subculture delinquency when the theory was evolved, but in the 1950s, study was primarily focused on boys. Cohen argued delinquent subcultures for rightly challenged dominant middle class values. Values such as deferred gratification, ambition, achievement, and respect for property. Is cultural deviance theory and delinquent subculture theory similar? Both theories were created to find the causes of why crime happens in lower class societies. Cultural deviance theory links delinquency to the formation of independent subculture with a unique set of values that clash with the mainstream culture. The criminologist Walter B. Miller, 1958, made significant additions to the work of Shaw, Mackay, and others. He added his own thesis to certain cultural values in lower class societies which were absent among the middle classes, played a major role contributing to social deviance or delinquent behavior. A delinquent can be included in the cultural deviance theory as they break society norms. The same goes with delinquent subculture theory due to delinquents being influenced by the people, place, and society they resided in to do crimes. Miller suggested that delinquent behavior arose as a result of focal concerns, or a set of issues that the subjects feel highly emotional, involved with the lower class culture.